Hey there, guys and girls, MMA community and YouTubers. I got a lot to talk about today about the post-fight recap. We want to go through some of the most important things first, so it's not really in any order. But here, first thing I wanted to touch on with you guys, man, as long as I want you to also know that as long as you keep making the right choices, and most of the time you're siding with the odd makers who are paid to make sure that they're giving you the right odds so that they're not going to get screwed and lose a ton of money on paying you guys more money for the people who should win. So the people who are supposed to win, they usually pay you much less money for them for a reason, because that's why they have odds and specific numbers and ways that they price them at, so that they're not getting screwed and the risk versus rewards can make up for the amount that they're paying you. Anyways, what we're gonna have to first touch on is I want to touch on the Boser versus Arlovski fight, okay? Arlovski did a different approach to this fight, and it made sense why he came in heavier than his normal self, and it kind of like hurt Boser for coming in lighter than his normal self. If he had, I'm sure, known what Arlovski's game plan was going to be, he probably would have taken a different approach, but regardless, it's neither here or there because Boser won the fight. I know, in certain areas he was kind of losing, like the more cleaner, better exchanges. Some of them went in the favor of Arlovski. He kind of ended strong as well. But when you're making go to the UFC website, not my website, not Joe Schmo's website, the actual official website of UFC, and they will verify these numbers for you, okay? Now look, you can't have the best of both worlds. You're either gonna have to be the guy who's counter-striking, picking and choosing your selection of your shots very carefully, which means that you're not gonna be the guy who's just a barrage and flurry of non-stop output given 10 strikes per minute, because you're the guy who's just waiting for the clean openings and picking and choosing very smart where you're gonna, but usually that guy, and when he's fighting a guy who's non-stop kicking and punching and throwing 10 per minute and landing, even though it's not as clean and slush and hard, he's still landing, and that's why there's a scoring system. That's why there's a point system. That's why they're adding these things up in totals. He more than doubled. If you look at the website, they'll show you yesterday's fights. He doubled Arlovski's total numbers in strikes and landing and everything, kicks, everything, more than either doubled or more than doubled in some other areas. So the fight wasn't even a close fight. And so that's why I was saying, if you have to be either one or the other. If you're going to be the guy who's carefully selecting your shots, that means that you're going to be the guy who makes the nicer connections, obviously, because you're very careful with which ones you're going to give. You have to also be the guy then that is going to win by a knockout. You can't let it go to the decision scorecards and be the guy who doesn't put in as much of an output. They're not judging on who's giving the nicer hits, the nicest shots, the cleaner shots. They're winning points by either knockout, submission, or points. You have to win by either one of those three things. If you don't win by knockout or submission, you got to win by points, right? You can't be the guy who gets less points and no knockout and still win. Well, that's who won yesterday in the Boser fight. That's why if you look at the interviews, the post-fight even the people, the analysts who some of them cited and said that Arlovski is somebody who, even if when I myself told you guys in the previous video that he knows how to win fights and win decisions even in fights that he was losing. So, but in this case, it didn't happen. He tried, it didn't happen. The judges screwed him. Where are we here? Okay.
Oh, here's the legs.
Okay, so let me go through some of the numbers at the UFC's website. This is the people who decided to rob Boser yesterday's own website, okay, from their own statistics. The clinch, let's see, nothing happened there, only one strike in the clinch, so we can't go off that. Okay, Tanner Boser landed in the distance on total strikes. He landed 68 compared to Arlovski's 33. So there he more than doubled Arlovski in the distance strikes. Legs, Arlovski got 12 kicks, Boser got 46. That's 4 times more. Body, they each got 6. Both of them got 6. The only difference is Boser got better statistic percentage rate because he got 6 out of 9 as opposed to 6 out of 13. So his percentage was better. He beat him there as well. So if you're a tie there, they got to go who's the more accurate. Accuracy will win on a tie. Accuracy now goes. So now we're at 3 out of 3 are going towards Boser. He hasn't lost any of them yet. Head strikes, even. 16 out of 16, and they're both 55 range. So that's a tie. 16 head strikes for each of them, assuming that they're true. I actually noticed Boser did hit him more in the head, if you ask me. Those numbers are not accurate. Okay, significant strike percentage, big. This is now the most important thing. A fighter, anybody who's a real fighter will tell you this is the most important area of it all. Like, if you've lost a couple of things, but you won this one, they'll give you the fight. This is the best area that you want to be at. Not just the percentage. Outlanded his percentage by a big margin. Boser landed 68 out of 119. So his percentage was way better. 57% to 41%. Big difference. But Arlovski landed 34 significant strikes to 60. Boser more than double his total landed significant. The most important thing, the word significant is in there for a reason. These are what matters. He more than doubled that. So what are you basing this off of? How are you giving it? The guy didn't have a shut eye, didn't have a big, he didn't get knocked down on the ground, didn't get points taken off. He came out of the fight looking just as clean and fresh as he did when the fight started. So how can you give this to Arlovski? But that was a parlay killer. That's why you gave it to Arlovski, because Vegas saved millions and billions of dollars off of letting Boser lose that fight, which is stupid because they're not thinking the line. They had a guy who could have made a big name for himself. He was coming off a nice streak. He played it safe and smart, but he won the fight fair and square. He should be now on a 6-fight win streak. Against a big name like that, a legend like that, that would have boosted his career substantially. This is going to change the entire course of this guy's career. And you're going to give it to a guy who's in his 40s, who's not going to be around for more than another year. Good luck selling that guy's next fight compared to what you would have sold Boser's next fight at, you big dummies. Anyway, so we got robbed there. Whatever. What can you do? And just in the total, like on a betting aspect, when you're doing parlays, like a guy, I'm the parlay king, so it affects me a lot, man. But I developed a system where even though what happened yesterday, even with the doctor stoppages, with the low IQ of Bevan Lewis, man, like literally you found, I even said the only thing he's not as good at Giles is a boxing match. He found a way, even with the stadium has no audience, no fans screaming. It's a clear communication between you and your trainers and your managers and your partners that are standing ringside. Nobody told him, don't box with this guy for 3 rounds. He boxed with him. He found his only path to victory and handed it to him. Said, here, box, I'll box with you. That's the only thing you're better at me. He didn't want to clinch. He didn't want to hold him in fence. He didn't want to attempt takedowns more. He didn't want to make it a dirty fight, gritty, like the way he was beating Uriah Hall and the way he's won and found success in all of his other fights. He was a favorite for a while for a reason, but his IQ, I've never seen such low IQ. This is the kind of guy, if you're not step by step telling him, do this, do that, do that. If you don't have a trainer who's excellent at managing somebody and nonstop giving him orders and commands during the fight so he can hear it clearly and then has to follow it clearly, this guy will never win fights. I'll fade this guy every day, every time, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. Terrible IQ, worst IQ I've ever seen. And that's why people fade him. That's why people have a lot of bad things to say about him. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I assumed that he would know that there's only one path to victory, and let's not give it to him. It's easy as just make it dirty, clinch with them, wrestle with them, do whatever you. The guy stood there, and not only did he box with him, but he did it terribly. He did it from the back, moving backwards, giving himself the worst of the exchanges, the biggest disadvantages during the boxing exchanges. He didn't even do that right. It's terrible, terrible. You would think at least he maybe worked on his boxing and he was prepared for it. He wanted to showcase it off. No, he showed no skills, no IQ, even on that part of his game. So terrible, terrible guy, terrible fight. So with that happening, no big deal. We still would have made a killing even with Bevan Lewis because we had so many other runs right. All my prop bets are, I told you guys, don't bet on the submission, don't bet on the knockout for Alexander Romanov. I said just bet him by finish because he could also do submissions. He's good at the ground at everything, and he may get a submission. What happened? He got a submission. Choked him out with a forearm to the neck. That's how crazy this guy is, dude. Have you ever seen a forearm submission choke? He put him to sleep with his forearm on the neck. So if you did what I said and just took him by finish, not by TKO or submission, the one that includes them all, you took a guy who was a minus 300 and turned it into almost even pick 'em, doubling your money. If you bet 100, you would have won 100 and then more. So you would have got underdog money on a guy who was a favorite. And I had so many of those correct that we could afford to get half the card wrong and still profit money. But that's why you got to be a patron, and you got to see, I listed a whole bunch of, right before the fight started, I said, these are the prop bets you guys got to go with. If you guys listen to my prop bets, all of them hit almost. I don't even think any of them missed. Besides the one that I even said was, the only one I said do at your own risk. It's a bit of a risk, but because it was paying like 8 to 1, I said that this one I wouldn't recommend unless you want to have some fun watching a fight and hoping it happens. I said by Ramiz by submission. He's got 8 out of 8 of his wins, 100% of his wins by submission. And in all of his other fight videos that I've watched tape on him, he goes from the beginning of the bell, he goes into it. That's why a lot of analysts picked him as their live dog of the week. But in this case, even Max Griffin, after the interview, after the post-fight interview, and even the commentators during the fight were saying, we're shocked that the guy who's been known to start from the beginning of when the bell sounds, non-stop attempts at getting the fight to the ground, even up until the 3rd round, had 0 attempts of taking the fight to the ground. So now we got to assume that this is going to be a guy who comes and gets to the big show. He's been waiting to make it to the UFC stage for so long. And when he finally got there, the most important fight of his career, he didn't bring with him what got him to the big show in the first place. You're here in the UFC because you're 8 out of 8 in finishes by taking people down and submitting them. So now you're going to tell me in the 3rd round, now we're already at the 3rd round, and you haven't even made one attempt at getting it to the ground so you can win by submission? Really? That's your game plan? What happened, man? What happened? So I can't, you can't expect to pick the right picks and then have the people come with the right game plan and the right person show up. So you can always have the right picks, but maybe the right person doesn't show up that day. And Ramiz didn't show up. That's why his ear got cut off, his eyes got bubbled. He's never looked so bad in his career. Nobody's ever beat him up so badly, and Max did nothing special. Griffin was nothing ordinary. He showed holes in his game, to be honest. From a guy fighter perspective, I've seen so many holes in Max's game that I see why he's on a 5-fight losing streak, or he's lost like 4 out of his last 5, and he was almost going to get cut. He is terrible. He leaves so many openings. You got to be a loser, deadbeat, not capable of or incapable of being considered UFC level material to lose to that guy the way he was fighting. But somebody who had his debut fight, who's never been in the UFC, was his first fight, proved not to be UFC material that day, so he got the win. He even said it himself, I'm surprised the guy didn't go for takedowns. If your own opponent is kind of hinting at dude, what the hell what kind of a game plan was that? What does that say? The guy who doesn't have good IQ himself is making fun of your IQ after the fight. Bad strategic stuff. So I just assumed that I was going to see the same guy that I saw in 100% of his other fights. So what can we? And that's why a lot of people did assume that as well. Nobody can fault us there. Other one is, besides Bevon Lewis' low IQ, besides Bozier's robbery, everybody knows he got robbed. The numbers don't lie. They're right here. You can see them for yourself. The other one was his strategic game plan that we don't even know where it came from. And the funny thing is, his coaches were screaming, "Good job, Ramiz! Good job, Ramiz!" I heard his corner every time he wasn't attempting takedowns and just falling in love with the striking, which wasn't even doing him too well. He was getting out-jabbed to death. He was getting, and I told you guys, jabs before the fight started. I made a video. I told you people win fights with jabs. Well, that's what won this guy his fight. He through a flurry of jabs, he closed up the guy's eyes, cut his ears with, he gave him that opportunity. He gave it to him by not attempting takedowns. Anyway, so other than that, the last thing I wanted to touch on is the main event. That referee should get fired, if in my opinion. Look, let's go back into recent history, okay? The most recent event, Marlon Moraes, this was a #1 contention fight, okay? It was a main event as well, 5-round fight. It was only the first round. This was going to determine who's going to be next up runner for the belt. As soon as the first time in the beginning of the first round, he got dropped, he even showed more defensive capabilities. When he got dropped, he did a backward spinning flip and landed with his legs to cover him in the air. The referee still stopped the fight. He stopped it with the guy doing rolls and defending himself. But Glover, who fell back and just lights out, I seen the eyes roll back to his head, and he just was defenseless, getting ground and pounded. Not just the Moraes fight got stopped as Corey Sandhagen was running to go do the ground and pounding before he can even get started. The referee stopped it. Dominic Cruz versus Henry Cejudo, Triple C. Soon as Dominic Cruz got dropped, as he wasn't even on the ground yet, he was working his way up, defending, using his arms to block. The referee stopped the fight. And that was another main event fight for the #1 contention to see who's going to fight for the belt. They stopped it in for. Why are those fights getting stopped? But the guy who was out cold, getting his head bounced in the canvas over and over twice, it happened in both rounds. Like, I don't blame Santos, man. The guy had been away for 2 years. He gave all his energy. He did what Anthony Smith did, but for good reason. That wasn't his game plan. He just saw the opening. He saw an opportunity where the guy was laying on the ground defenseless, and he took advantage of it and gassed out. But the referee made it look like, hey, that's not enough, so you got to keep going. And he realized, like, man, I gave everything I had. It should have been enough. And all Glover had to do was roll over from the bottom to the top and just put his, he didn't even put him to sleep. He didn't put even crank on his neck before Santos said, look, I don't have, he knew he was going to be in the same position Anthony Smith was in. With Anthony Smith, the Lionheart is his nickname, he decided to take the long route, not the shortcut, and not tap out where Santos tapped out, which is actually a smart thing to live the fight another day because you don't want brain damage. There's a reason why Anthony Smith was picking up his teeth and handing them to the referee and had to go through surgery after surgery and has still, shown signs of damage from that fight and has not looked the same since. Santos doesn't want it. He wants a long career. He wants to have grandkids that understand what he's speaking about. He doesn't want to be a vegetable. He doesn't want to lose his teeth. So immediately he went from winning the fight to losing the fight in a second. All thanks to the referee. Another reason why, you can't fault us for that, man. It's just, if you don't have consistency, if you don't have a system, a method, there's going to be madness, chaos. There's no stability. Nobody's going to, know what to look for, or how to grade a fight, how to judge a fight, what kind of a fighter should be the favorite. How do you even know these things if there's no consistency, there's no system that you guys stick to? Anyways, I had enough about that. Everything else, we went perfect on everything else, but if you just listen to my prop bets and my single bets alone and a couple of the other parlays, the smaller parlays that we hit, you had an amazing night, even on one of our worst nights ever, because before that, I had perfect streaks. I had none wrong, other than the Bobby Green fight, which everybody knows also was a robbery. It was the only question. There's a reason why at the post-fight interview, the media asked Dana White, the only question that they asked him about as far as decisions by the judges go was the Bobby Green. What do you feel about that? Asked Dana, how do you feel about the decision by the judges for the Bobby Green? The guy, this was a robbery because he doubled him. Bobby Green tripled him. So that was even a bigger robbery. And besides that, I have no wrong. So keep following me, man. And eventually, if you keep giving the right picks long enough, it will pay off. You want to see my bank account? You want to see my casino slips? I'm still in the positives by a lance. I would have to have, this was a positive week, so I would have to have 7 back-to-back weeks of losing money. And I've never had one of those weeks at all yet, so thank goodness. But I would have to have 7 weeks back-to-back just to maybe break even. I wouldn't even be considered probably losing it because of how much I win each week. So keep following, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Don't lose faith when you see the robberies. We're going to make adjustments. We're going to prepare for next week's events to make sure that even with robberies, even with this bull crap that they're pulling on us, we're still going to take them for everything they got. Thank you guys for your support. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video coming up maybe tomorrow to give you to get ahead of the line movement, to give you some numbers. On next week's fight so you can lock in your bets, and I'll be showing my bet slips to the patrons so they know how to get ahead of the movement and make some money for next week to make up for anything they may have lost this week, guys. Stay up.